Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you everybody for a great day. Now, fortunately, Sue does know me quite well, so she knows that whenever there's an opportunity for me to just talk, there is an element of risk in it. So I am going to go around the houses twice. I'm going to take 2 bites at this cherry. The second one is going to require your complete and utter indulgence. So I'm going to start. I'm not necessarily going to go in order because I just think there were some themes that came out of the whole day and I might cluster the themes together a bit. But I will start at the beginning, sort of, with Andrew's speech, which I actually thought was a fabulous speech. And I saw in the comments that the ACNC said it would be available as a recording. It would be great if we could persuade Andrew to provide it in a written version too, because I saw people wanted to pass it around to their boards, and can I confess I've already done that with my board, because I thought they should read it. Anyway, Andrew said, governance is what connects trust to impact. It's how the sector earns its legitimacy, defends its independence, and drives change. What a pretty clarion call. Governance is like, I love this one, governance is like gym membership. We all like having one, but real progress comes from turning up and doing the work. And then positioning, how he positioned the ACNC in that, which is saying, he said the ACNC plays a unique role in setting the tone for governance across the sector. So then we did explore the ACNC. We heard about the importance and saw lots of evidence through the whole day of the benefit of the ACNC connecting us in the sector to other parts of the government system. We heard an update on governance service standards. There was some great news in that. Really good to see responsiveness and learning and agility. I personally gave a little cheer for the launching of the Constitution templates. I bloody love that. It's just so practically valuable as someone who has founded a number of charities and talks to people about, how do you get charitable status, how do you get DGR, are you a PBI, whatever, how much is it going to cost to get legal help? I just think that's extraordinary, so thank you. We saw a demonstration of the importance and commitment and gratitude for what Sue called the wisdom of practitioners. And I really do believe we see that every day within the ACNC. It's something that I observe. I think it is true. And both Sue and the directors stress the commitment to external consultation, which delivers better user guidance, and that collaboration increases quality. We got an insight into data from the always engaging Tim about the sector. You are, it's great. I love the enthusiasm, it's fantastic. And actually, there was a murmur that went through the room. It was tangible when Tim told us, or maybe actually it was Rachel, said that 30% of registered charities are extra small. They have a turnover under 50k a year. I mean, we all went, oh, right? We know that half of the registered charities don't employ staff. They run purely on volunteers. But just that continuing depth of understanding. Now, we all know how significant the sector is, but hearing that we are economically bigger than manufacturing and mining kind of gave me a right on. Let's get out there and make sure other people realise the same. And we heard about how the ACNC data is helping us to see around corners and spot emerging patterns and trends. Rachel then jumped from the directors panel to chairing the session on the ATO non-profit self-review returns thingamajig. I could have said another word there, but maybe I'll leave that to the end of my comments. It was great to get an update, but I really do want to shout out how inspirational I found Debbie in that work. So this is where you get a risk asking me to do this stuff, because I can tell you what I liked, not necessarily what happened. I thought Debbie was absolutely... Is Debbie still here? Oh, that's a shame, because I seriously thought she was fabulous, and I thought she was such an inspiring illustration of what is most precious about our sector, and gave us the reality of how regulation impacts on us as people and how we congregate and gather as community for what matters to us. And it strikes me that toy libraries are bloody lucky to have Debbie. And we can't assume that all parts of the community have that same talent and access. And it also demonstrates the value of good peak bodies. We learnt that we're now in the second cycle of the self-reporting process. It was good to see the improvements, or to hear about some of the improvements in the process and the guidance and the additional resources, which was great. Although it was a bit alarming to hear that the ATO has 22 definitions of an associated person. It wasn't really highlighted in the panel, and I understand why, but this has been a really contested issue. And all I'll say on that is I note the article published today in the Institute of Community Directors in their online news by David Crosby, that if you're interested in finding out a bit more about that, then have a read of that article. I also noticed that there were quite a lot of questions in Slido about that we just didn't have time to get to, and maybe there's a way of passing them on to the ATO for follow-up in their ATO non-profit news or something. And then final comments on this part. I think it's important to reiterate the ACNC's confirmation that it does not have regulatory oversight of non-profits which are not registered charities, despite its name. And also reiterate the ATO's assurance that there will be no penalties for non-profits who are caught in the limbo of the process of applying for ACNC registration. There was a real tangible energy shift in the room, I think, when we moved into the Safety First panel, which I felt just completely captured all of us as an audience. Andrew's ripper opening comment that the scaffolding around what we do overseas is under threat just kind of, I think, took us all right there. We heard about the challenges of financial compliance and safety. We heard about the challenges of the speed and reality of on-the-ground change. And we heard about operational risks on the ground. And Matthew talked about the growing challenge of misinformation. We didn't spend a lot on that, but it is a major issue, I think, for us. And thanks to Anne-Marie from Good Shepherd, she told me that the UN is now calling this an infodemic, and that the UN has issued guidelines on it. So you know what I'm going to be doing when I go home and pour a glass of wine? I'm going to be having a look at that. The panel conversation turned into governance and board capability, and this was a really common theme across the whole day, brought home so flipping beautifully by our final panel. So we had conversations and questions around, are the capabilities of our boards fit for purpose for today and for what's coming at us around all of these corners? Starting with Andrew's comments that good governance channels innovation, helps navigate uncertainty and builds shared purpose. And the ACNC Director Panel looked at governance through the regulatory lens. We talked about governance of risk and the balance between managing governance and actually the appropriate level of risk appetite and risk tolerance. And I think that final panel was such a powerhouse. Really appreciate personally the generosity that you all brought both professionally and personally to that conversation. The evidence is clear that diversity improves the quality of governance and productivity. We explored what constitutes diversity and the intersectionality of skills and experience and diversity, cultural diversity. We talked about the imperative to deliberately nourish and support the emerging and growing pool of talent and then ways to sustain them. And we also talked about the imperative to have the right conditions to allow voice to be expressed and genuinely heard. The panel challenged us to think about how we mitigate against the power imbalance of access and privilege. And just because my brain hasn't had time to process that quite as much as some of the other sessions, I was just really taken by some of the words. So I loved the words cultural fit versus cultural add, and observing and absorbing and how we learn. And then finally, is board representation the right issue or answer? And when you said that, the person sitting next to me went, bam. So I think that landed. Yeah, that was you, Stella. We could have spent much longer with the state and territory regulators my mind entered the panel discussion with a line from the safety panel, the pain of compliance. And I think it was a really useful reminder that our range of compliance requirements needs a really good spring clean every now and again, rather than just adding more, which we do understandably as the more we understand risk. But yeah, spring cleaning would be perhaps a good exercise. We've been talking about the need for fundraising harmonisation for so long, I'm a bit bored talking about it, but it was good to see that we are inching closer and closer. It was also interesting to reflect on how to use the right regulatory tool to get the right outcome. I thought that example about Victorian consumer law was really interesting. And it was a really valuable reminder of the scope and range of regulatory oversight that our state and territories have to cover. We had some discussion about bad actors, how to respond, how to mitigate risk, and the theme around bad actors was continued into the conversation between Tash and Michelle on compliance priorities and upcoming regulatory focus. So that's my kind of sensible head summary of where we went today. Now you're going to have to indulge me. And Jessica, I'm a reformed rower, but I'm going to start with the real boss of today, Kate, and her analogy as the cruise director. Now, please note, I have never actually been on a cruise, so I am really going to labour this metaphor. So if Kate is the cruise director of the magnificent ACNC cruise ship, we are definitely charting a course that Andrew referred to, and I am paraphrasing him here, to create a 5-year navigation map with a 2-year weather forecast. With a governing ship navigating the route, the risk, the people, but through a living journey of innovation and seeing over horizons. As demonstrated so well in the safety panel, our waters and context, both real and perceived, are VUCA, which is a military acronym. It's actually from the Army, but let's just pretend it's from the Navy to keep the metaphor flowing, for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And we talk quite a bit about the risks, the wild storms, the deep sea monsters, the rogue tides, with terrorism, geopolitics, and cyber risks. And indeed, Andrew did say that we need to be like sharks. We need to keep moving because nothing is static in our time. But with the ACNC as the steward, giving us the scaffolding to build trust, capability, adaptation, and therefore fulfilment of all our charitable purposes. Navigating complex waters needs data. We constantly need to track where we are, where we're heading, and how we need to course correct. And we also know that oceans do not know national boundaries. Water and tides flow to their own rhythms and physics. But I want to finish with a reflection on something Tim said early in the day. You are too young to even remember this time, Tim, but I remember it on the battle lines. He said, before the ACNC, we had no way of understanding the size, scale, and complexity of the sector. And that is so true. And there are people in the room, looking at you, Alice, and you, David, 20, 30 years ago, fighting for a single national regulator. We've covered quite a bit of that today. The diversity of the waterways and the ocean, the variety of the land masses and sandbanks to navigate the plethora of marine life and all the other vessels, other regulators and other authorities that are also merrily sailing on our oceans. It's great to see the progress we're making and the continued strengthening of the seaworthiness of our charities. But it is also clear that there is so much still to do. So, Cruise Director Kate, I'll stop torturing your metaphor and just do some closing thanks, if you'll indulge me a couple more minutes. I want to thank all our speakers and panel members. Thank you for your generous sharing of your time, of your knowledge and of your wisdom today, and also every single one of you, your evident passion for your work and for the charitable sector and its causes and purposes. Thank you everybody for joining us in the room and online to keep learning and improving together. And thank you to the ACNC team who've done all the work to make today happen. So to the comms team, to Rachel, Karen, Sharon, Shannon, Brianna and Anne-Marie, thank you. to Anya, Suse and Maria for all the admin support, and to Ruby, who was the overarching project coordinator, maestro, captain extraordinaire. I just want to do a special shout out to you, Tash, because I think it's today your last day. Yeah, it's really sad. So Tash has been the Assistant Commissioner and General Counsel for a couple of years, just over 2 years, and she's leaving because she's been lured back to South Australia and the ATO. Fine, bugger off you go. Have a good time. We'll miss you. But thank you. It's been wonderful getting to know you, Tash, and we wish you all the best. And finally, my thanks to Sue, our Commissioner. I like the fact someone called you Commissioner Sue. I think you did, didn't you? It's a bit like kind of Father Bob or Postman Pat. So thanks to Commissioner Sue for a great day. Thank you.